There's one big problem with the Ascension, and it happens every year. And the problem is the timing of the celebration of Ascension. Because in December, we begin the annual journey of rehearsing Jesus' life and how he was born in Bethlehem, and we celebrate that at Christmas. Through January and Epiphany, we look at all of Jesus' different travelings and his teachings. During Lent, usually March-ish, we see how Jesus and all of his events led to Holy Week. And then there's Holy Week itself, and then there's Easter, and then 50 days later, sometime in May, Jesus ascends to the clouds. But, to my point, this means that Ascension always coincides with the end of the school year, the end of spring, the end of the semester, and so it always feels like an ending to Jesus' life. Like Jesus' earthly ministry is over. He packed up now, the story's done, and he left on a cloud. Not all unlike the students this week who will pack up all their desk supplies in a brown grocery bag and walk away from the school building. And so maybe this is why the church isn't always very good at remembering and celebrating the Ascension. As Barbara Brown Taylor preaches, who wants to mark the day that Jesus went out of this world, never to be seen again? Hungry as we are for the presence of Jesus, the one thing we do not need is a day to remind us that Jesus left. Well, good news this morning. Because our text from Luke wants to drive home the point that Jesus' ascension is anything but an ending, and nothing even close to bad news. Quite the opposite. Luke does everything he can to get us to see that Jesus' ascension is only the beginning. So to see this, let's back up in our text just a little bit to see immediately what happened prior to this story. Because in the story that just precedes this one, we hear and see the risen Jesus talking to his fearful disciples about who he really is. He tells them that he really is in flesh and blood, the one who was crucified, died, and buried. And that now he really is risen from the dead. He really is now in the present, their Messiah, their rabbi, and their friend. And to even drive home the point even more, he takes a piece of boiled fish. Apparently, Jesus felt the need to literally show them that he was flesh and bones. It was important for the disciples and for us to see that the risen Jesus was not just some sort of a vaporous ghost, but he was truly alive in flesh and blood. Ghosts can't eat fish. Then after this, he walks them through the scriptures, helping the disciples see how all of the ancient stories now can be seen through Easter eyes. Okay. Now we get up to our text. After this show and tell moment that Jesus is a person, a body, Jesus leads them out to Bethany. And if that place sounds familiar, it should be to you, because Bethany was the home of Lazarus and Mary and Martha. And then we catch Luke's beautiful brushstrokes. Jesus lifted up his hands to bless them, and then all of Jesus is lifted up. Literally, by the way, in Luke's original Greek, Jesus was lifted beyond into God's presence. The flesh and blood Jesus, the crucified, ruined, and restored body, was now taken back into the divine community forever, with the promise that we'll hear next week that as we saw him go, he will surely come back. So the ascension of Jesus is not the end of the world, you see. It's only the beginning of a new kingdom. Jesus is still alive. Jesus still reigns. Jesus is still operating and working and operative. And right there really is the whole core of our faith. And we've been together a long time, so you know that that core belief is bedrock to me. Every sermon I preach, every sermon you hear is shaped by the truth that Jesus lives, Jesus is Lord, and the promised day of God is sure to be. To be honest, it's really the only sermon I've got. But now, how does that matter now? Great question. Because it gets to the core of our faith, because it tells us, you see, that we are to live more in the present, shaped by God's future, than we are to live in the past. Because Jesus still reigns, because Jesus is still alive, we are called to live in the present, trusting who we will be more than who we have been. To be shaped more by our hope than by our hurt, because Jesus is Lord. Even in days of suffering, even in days of non-suffering, because Jesus is Lord, that future can shape us now. We're not home yet, we're not there yet, but if Jesus is really Lord, and I believe he is, someday we will be, and not just for us, but all the world will be home. And that new day is being born bit by bit among us in the present. Here's another way to think about it. As a pastor, I regularly go to the hospital to make visits. And sometimes, unfortunately, things may go sideways for some certain people, and so they're put into intensive care. When you're in intensive care, then what usually happens is I meet the family not in the hospital room of intensive care, but in the waiting room. The family lounge just outside the intensive care doors. You've all been in that waiting room, right? You know what happens in a waiting room. Random strangers and all of their anxieties are put together. And most of the time in a waiting room, time is pretty simple. People sip their coffee, they read the newspaper, they play Wordle, they scroll Facebook. Sometimes they start up a little chat with your neighbor. Oh, your little guy there, how old is he? Oh, he's 2? Really? Oh, my granddaughter's going to be 2 in July, too. Normal stuff is going on. It's all ordinary, except that it's a waiting room. And because it's a waiting room, in the midst of all of that ordinary stuff, everyone is thinking about their loved one on the other side of that door. After all, that's why you're there. Beyond that door is someone you love and who loves you. And it's that love on the other side of the door that is governing and defining your every minute in the waiting room. All the while you're doing the ordinary stuff of feeding yourself and telling stories and working Sudoku, there's always an eye on that door. That's why you're there. You don't know when it's going to happen, but you know, you trust, you hope. That door is going to go open. And when it does, the whole room goes silent, and everybody looks at that nurse to see if it's their name that will be announced. Everybody stops. Well, almost everybody. Some are oblivious, of course. There's always that guy in the corner when the door opens and the room goes quiet. He's watching a sports game, and all you hear him say is, "I can't believe the ref made such a bad call." That guy thinks he's just in a room. He doesn't quite get that he's in a waiting room. he doesn't know that the future defines the present. I think we live in a way, all of our life, you see, in a waiting room. There's holy love, not on the other side of the door, but on the other side of the clouds, that defines our present. That's why we're here. Incidentally, I think this image might go a long way also in helping us understand those wonderful but bizarre parables that Jesus told about the second coming. You know, like the one about two guys harvesting in a field. They're harvesting wheat away, and all of a sudden the one guy looks and the other guy is gone. And he wonders what happened. Because the guy that was left, you see, thought it was just that, a field. What he didn't understand, which the other guy did, is that it was a waiting room called a field. One worker knows we're not home yet. The other worker thought, this is it. I know that at times it's very easy to forget that we live in a waiting room, especially when so much time and stuff has happened and the door hasn't yet opened. It's easy to get hopeless. Just last week, Kathy and I found ourselves in the McNamara Airport terminal. It was a Thursday morning, a weekday morning, a non-holiday anything, early morning flight. The place should have been a ghost town, right? Wrong. We got out of our Uber and the terminal was stuffed with wall-to-wall frustrated travelers, a sea of people. Apparently, Delta had upgraded their computer systems, and apparently Delta's computer said, we don't want to be upgraded. So we were in this sea of people looking for the right line. And then the line for pre-check, and then the line for security, but nobody wanted to get out of line. We asked strangers, is this the line? I don't know, we hope so. Any way for us to find out? I don't know, but I'm not getting out of this line and losing my place. And so I'm thinking all the time, but I want to be in the right line. Who knows? We could wait 3 weeks in this line and end up at Starbucks. I don't know where the line is going. It could be a line to nowhere. Do you ever feel that way? That life is just like standing in a line to nowhere. Some days it feels like everything is falling apart. There's nothing organized. Will the center hold? Are we beginning to see the end of things that I've always taken for granted? Will anybody step out of the line and fix this? We're not home yet. We're still in the waiting room. But I believe this, that Jesus is Lord, active, alive, and preparing, and because of that, we will get home. Ascension is like Jesus saying, look, I've got to go back in the intensive care wing for a while. There's some more healing and fixing and prepping I have to do back there. What you're going to do is wait here, working and thinking and practicing everything I've taught to you. See those strangers over in the corner of the waiting room? Go tell them the true meaning of why they're waiting in this room. Tell them that it's not just any old room. And all the time, keep half an eye on this door because I'm coming back and you've got to be ready any second, any day. And I'm going to go through that door and I'm going to come back through that door. And when you see me again, then we're all going to go through that door together. That's my promise. All of our lives are lived in that place, knowing that there's a holy love just beyond the clouds, like a holy love beyond the intensive care doors. And that defines the present. I thought about that this past Tuesday when I stood with Kim at the Great Lakes National Cemetery. And over the urn of her father's ashes, we comforted each other with the text, I go to prepare a place for you. If it were not so, would I have told you? I think about people who struggle with their health, short-term, long-term, doesn't matter. Those daily reminders that this body is finite. But Ascension says, but when that door opens and when Christ comes to get us and calls our name, we will be made like him, a body built for eternity. And until that day, Ascension says, and you can abide in God's heartbeat, even in your pain and in your wondering about what is next. Because of Ascension, because Jesus is alive, we know that folks whose minds are captured by Alzheimer's or dementia, they also abide in God's heartbeat. Even their confusion and grief cannot separate them from the love of God. Ascension proclaims you are not alone, never without God, no matter what, no matter how bruised or broken or abandoned you may feel or not feel on any particular day. When I thought about Ascension, I thought about graduates that I read about from Calvin University last week. There is a group there of education majors who declared that they are called to go into the world to parts of the waiting room, those are my words, not theirs, where there are God's beloved children who have no access to education. So this group of education majors, not caring about salary or insurance or personal days off, are all going to go together to live into that promised day and try to bring some of it into the here and now by sharing their skills of teaching. For the poor, the rich, the forgotten, the remembered, the frightened, the bold, the sick, the broken, the abused, for you and me, when we know days of suffering and when we don't, the promise is the suffering will end because a day is coming when that door is going to open. The great physician will heal himself, and the day of days will arrive. Everyone will see it together, that Jesus is Lord. He was Lord in the beginning, he was Lord in the middle, and he's Lord at the end. That's the entire message of Ascension. We can get better. The world can too. Many have sold out on this Ascension dream, but listen, Jesus is Lord, and he doesn't need them to believe it for it to be true. This world will not end. Rather, it will be reborn, and the promised day is coming. I don't know exactly what happens when we die. My name hasn't been called at the door yet. But I trust this. The love of God cannot bear to let you go. And I know that on the other side of the door, God is. That God reigns, God wins, and God holds fast. And all of that makes me want to respond to the Ascension as did the disciples of our text who witnessed it. They went back to Jerusalem filled with joy and ready to worship. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.